Alien girl gave the human back his broken mug, but what she carved into it was the twist. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. Evan Miller steadied himself as the maintenance bay shuddered again, the vibration rattling every loose bolt in the room and making the fluorescent lights flicker like tired fireflies. The shift alarms murmured in the rafters, a low electronic hum that settled into his bones after too many nights on duty. His hand brushed the edge of his work table, bumping the ceramic mug perched near the corner. It teetered for a breath before rolling off the surface and striking the metal floor with a small, defeated sound. A thin crack spidered across its surface. Evan let out a quiet sigh as he picked it up, his thumb tracing the fracture line. He'd fixed this mug twice already, each time telling himself it wouldn't break again. It wasn't expensive, just a faded white cup with a chipped handle, but it had been the last package his mother mailed before her passing. It was the kind of ordinary thing that somehow held a whole life inside it, and he treated it like it mattered because, to him, it did. He was still turning the mug over in his hand when he heard light footsteps behind him, soft enough that they barely rose above the hum of ventilation fans. When he glanced over his shoulder, he saw her, Kayla RHYSS, the Lemurian trainee who had arrived only a week earlier. Her skin was a pale blue, almost luminescent under the cold light, and her eyes carried that quiet, watchful glow her species was known for. She stood near the threshold, holding a data pad close to her chest, uncertainty flickering over her features like she wasn't sure she should step inside. "Sorry," she said softly, her voice echoing with that musical resonance common to Lemurians. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I heard something fall." Evan offered her a faint smile, rubbing a thumb along the mug's rim. "Just gravity picking a fight with me again." She tilted her head at the fractured cup, and something thoughtful sparked in her eyes. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just watched him hold it like it was something fragile in more ways than one. "Does it matter to you?" she asked finally. "More than it looks," he replied. "But it'll be fine. A little glue, a little patience." Her gaze lingered, not pitying, not condescending, just curious in that gentle way her people seemed to see the world, through layers of meaning humans sometimes ignored. Without another word, she nodded and stepped back, as if memorizing something important before turning to leave. Evan didn't know yet that she would return the next day with the mug restored in a way he never expected, carrying a message that would stay with him for the rest of his life. But for now, all he saw was a quiet alien girl disappearing down the hallway, her footsteps fading into the soft hum of the station around him. The next morning came quietly on Helios 4, the kind of soft artificial dawn that eased itself through the station's filtered windows and painted the hallways in pale gold. Evan Miller woke before his alarm, the way he always did when a shift had left too many thoughts spinning around his head. He sat on the edge of his bunk, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, and his gaze drifted toward the small shelf beside him. The mug sat there exactly where he left it, the cracked ceramic catching the faint glow from the corridor lights. He picked it up for a moment, turning it over in his hands, feeling the uneven line where the fracture had run. It looked worse in the quiet morning than it had the night before. Still, he set it gently back on the shelf and prepared for his day. The maintenance bay was already alive when he arrived, full of soft mechanical whirs and the rhythmic beep of diagnostic screens. Tools clicked, vents hissed, and somewhere above, a loose panel gave its regular metallic rattle. He tapped his badge, stepped inside, and started on the usual checklist. Tighten a conduit, calibrate a sensor, reset a power relay. Ordinary tasks in an ordinary day. But behind it all, his mind kept drifting back to Kayla, the way her eyes lingered on the mug, the way she studied him, as if trying to understand why a small, fragile object mattered so much. He wondered if she thought about it after she walked away, or if it had already faded from her thoughts by now. Lemurians were known for their discipline, their focus, their calm logic in moments when humans got tangled in feelings. She probably had more important things on her mind than a broken piece of ceramic. As he worked, The sound of footsteps reached him, soft and steady. It was the same rhythm as last night, almost weightless against the metal flooring. He looked up, expecting to see her, but it was only another engineer passing through. He pushed the thought away, returning to a stubborn sensor panel that refused to respond. Hours passed in the steady hum of work, but every now and then he caught himself glancing toward the doorway, half expecting her shape to appear. When his shift timer finally chimed, he stretched his shoulders and wiped a smudge of grease from his wrist. Habit told him to head to the cafeteria for dinner, but something nudged him toward the observation deck instead. The deck was quiet, mostly empty this time of day. Through the wide pane of reinforced glass, the nebula outside shifted in soft ribbons of blue and violet, a slow cosmic ballet sweeping across the darkness. Evan leaned on the railing, letting the view settle him. He had always liked this part of the station. It made problems feel smaller. Footsteps sounded behind him again. He turned, and this time, it really was her. Kayla stood near the entrance, hands clasped in front of her, her blue skin catching the nebula light. She did not speak right away. She just offered a small nod, as if the silence itself was a greeting. "Hey," Evan said, trying to sound casual. "Long day." "Long," she admitted. "But I wanted to see this place again. The view helps me think." Her voice carried that soft echo again, like a melody carried through water. She stepped closer, stopping at the railing beside him. For a moment, they both watched the drifting colors outside, sharing the quiet without needing to explain it. "I have been considering something," Kayla said finally. "About your mug." Evan blinked, surprised she remembered. "It is not the object itself," she continued. "It is what it holds. Humans attach meaning to simple things. It is beautiful." The compliment caught him off guard, as gentle as it was sincere. He smiled slightly, unsure what to say. She looked down at her hands for a moment, an expression crossing her face that he could not quite read. A mixture of resolve and something softer. "May I borrow it?" she asked. "Just for a little while." Evan hesitated, the request unexpected, but something in her tone felt steady and genuine. He nodded. "Sure. Just be careful with it." Kayla gave a small, almost grateful smile. "I will." She turned to leave, the nebula light catching on her silhouette, and Evan felt a strange warmth settle in his chest without fully understanding why. By the time the station shifted into its late evening cycle, the air inside Helios 4 felt cooler, quieter, as if the entire structure had decided to breathe more softly. Evan Miller finished logging his maintenance reports and rubbed the stiffness from his neck. The day had stretched longer than he expected, but one thing kept drifting back into his thoughts. Kayla had taken the mug. It should have made him uneasy. Instead, it sparked a strange comfort he could not explain. He stepped out of the bay and made his way down the corridor, the lights dimmed to a gentle amber glow to mimic sunset. A few crew members passed him with tired nods, the kind shared by people who had been awake far too long. Evan returned the gesture and continued toward the observation deck out of habit, drawn to the quiet and the view. But before he reached it, he heard a soft chime behind him. When he turned, Kayla stood there, holding a slim tool pouch close to her chest. She looked slightly out of breath, though her expression stayed calm. "You walk quickly," she said, her voice carrying that soft musical hum. "I have been looking for you." Evan blinked, surprised. "Is everything all right?" Kayla hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I wanted you to know that I have begun working on your mug. I needed to source the correct materials, and I may need more time than expected." He felt something lift inside him, something small but warm. "Take as long as you need. There is no rush." She studied his face with those steady, luminous eyes. "You trust me with something important to you." "I do," Evan said simply. "That is unusual," she replied. "Lemurians do not easily trust others with objects tied to memory." Evan gave a small shrug. "I guess humans can be sentimental." "Sentimental," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "It is not a weakness." She said it so quietly he almost missed it. Kayla shifted the tool pouch in her hands. "May I ask something?" He nodded. "Why do humans keep physical reminders? Why something fragile, like ceramic? Why not digital copies or holographic archives?" Evan took a slow breath, thinking. "Because a real object carries a real weight," he said. "You feel it in your hand, and it feels like the person who once held it is still close. You cannot touch a hologram." Kayla looked down at her fingers, flexing them slightly, as if imagining the sensation. Lemurians do not use physical keepsakes. Memories are stored internally, through resonance patterns. We do not need objects to hold what we feel. Maybe not, Evan said. But sometimes an object reminds you that you are still human, still connected. She looked up at him, her expression softening in a way he had not seen before. Something unspoken passed between them, light as a breath. I will take great care of it, she said at last. I promise. He smiled. I know you will. Kayla nodded once, then stepped back, the glow of the corridor lights brushing her silhouette. Before turning to leave, she paused. There is one more thing. When I return it to you, it will not be the same. Her tone carried meaning he could not decode. Not yet. Different how? Evan asked. Kayla looked thoughtful, almost guarded. Different in a way that matters. She offered a small bow of her head, a gesture of Lemurian respect, then disappeared around the corner, leaving Evan standing alone in the quiet hallway, wondering what she intended to change and why her promise stirred something deeper than he expected. The next day moved with a quiet rhythm, the kind that made Helios Four feel more like a drifting city than a station built from metal and circuits. Evan Miller walked the length of the maintenance corridor with a small toolkit in hand, the familiar weight grounded in his palm. The shift lights glowed a soft blue as the system cycled into its morning mode, and the hum of ventilation filled the silence like a steady heartbeat. He kept catching himself glancing down hallways, half expecting to see Kayla rounding a corner with her calm, measured steps. She was not there, but her presence lingered in the same way a melody can remain in the mind long after the notes fade. His tasks for the morning were simple. Recalibrate the environmental controls on Deck 3, inspect a set of aging coolant lines, and check the readings on the navigation stabilizer. Straightforward. Predictable. Yet every time he paused to adjust a panel or tighten a connection, he felt the absence of the mug, that familiar weight the station somehow felt lighter without. It surprised him how quickly the missing object created an emptiness that was not really about the mug itself. While reviewing a pressure readout, Evan heard a faint chime that came from the far end of the corridor. He looked up, expecting a system alert, but instead saw Kayla stepping out from a supply alcove, her posture composed and her hands clasped in front of her. Her eyes found his with that gentle focus he had come to recognize. I have something for you, she said. Evan felt a quick lift in his chest. The mug. She shook her head. Not yet. I am still working on it. This is something else. She approached him with measured steps and opened her hand to reveal a small, translucent piece of crystal no larger than a thumb. It glowed faintly with a soft, internal shimmer, like a trapped fragment of starlight. It is a Lemurian resonance shard, she explained. When held, it stabilizes emotional energy. Many humans find it calming. Evan blinked, surprised. You made this? I shaped it, she said. It is a simple piece, but I thought it might help until your mug is returned. He reached out to take it, feeling the smooth surface warm instantly against his palm. The glow brightened slightly, responding to his touch. A gentle warmth settled in his chest. Thank you, he said quietly. You did not have to do this. I wanted to. Kayla replied, her voice soft. I sensed your attachment to the mug. I did not want you to feel its absence so sharply. Evan tucked the shard carefully into his pocket. You are full of surprises. A slight smile touched her features. Not surprises. Intentions. Lemurians believe that small gestures can restore balance. You restored balance for me when you helped me in the maintenance bay. He remembered that moment. The way she had struggled not to show how shaken she was after the falling debris. The way her voice had trembled despite her discipline. Anyone would have helped, he said. She looked at him with a steady, searching expression. Not everyone does. A quiet passed between them, not heavy but warm, carried by the soft hum of the station around them. After a moment, Kayla straightened slightly. I will continue working on your mug tonight. When it is finished, you will understand why it cannot be the same as before. I am looking forward to it, Evan said. She nodded, then stepped back. I will find you when it is ready. With that, she turned and moved down the hallway, her silhouette framed by the cool glow of the deck lights. Evan watched her go, the resonance shard warm in his pocket, feeling something shift inside him, subtle but undeniable, like the first spark of meaning in a place that had felt empty for too long. The evening cycle on Helios 4 drifted in with a soft dimming of lights, turning the long corridors into quiet rivers of amber glow. Evan Miller walked slowly toward the observation deck, the resonance shard warm in his pocket, as if it carried a small heartbeat of its own. He had finished his shift an hour earlier, but his mind felt restless, pulled toward the quiet places of the station where thoughts could settle without the noise of machinery. When he stepped into the deck, the room was almost empty. The wide window stretched across the curved wall, showing a wash of deep space where streaks of violet dust drifted like slow-moving clouds. Evan leaned on the railing, letting the silence gather around him. It reminded him of the evenings he used to spend on Earth, sitting on the back porch with a cup of coffee, listening to wind instead of a ventilation system. The memory made his chest feel tight in a way that was not painful, just honest. He reached into his pocket and took out the resonance shard. It pulsed faintly as it rested in his palm, reacting to the warmth of his skin. He closed his fingers around it and breathed deeply. Something in its soft glow helped him feel anchored, less scattered. Footsteps echoed behind him, light and careful. He did not turn immediately. He already knew it was her. Kayla stopped beside him, her reflection appearing in the glass like a second figure layered over the drifting nebula. Her blue skin shimmered faintly in the low light, and her posture carried the same gentle composure he had come to recognize. "You found the shard useful," she said softly. Evan nodded. "It helps more than I expected." "Good," she replied. "I hoped it would ease your thoughts." She looked out at the stars, her eyes tracing the swirling colors beyond the glass. Evan watched her expression, noting how the light caught the edges of her features. There was a calmness there, but also something contemplative, something she was not yet ready to say out loud. "How is the mug coming along?" Evan asked. Kayla clasped her hands lightly, a thoughtful gesture. "It is nearly finished. The repair is complete, but the final step requires a precise incision. I want to be certain before I begin." "Incision," he echoed. "Lemurian craftsmanship is different from human methods," she explained. "We engrave meaning into the object, not just lines. It must be done carefully." Evan absorbed that. "So the change you mentioned, it is part of that engraving?" Kayla nodded slowly. "Yes. The markings are not decoration. They are a message." She hesitated, then added, "A message of acknowledgement." Evan felt something flicker in his chest. "Acknowledgement of what?" Kayla looked at him, her eyes steady but softer than usual. "Of what you did for me in the maintenance bay, and of what your trust means." Her voice was quiet, almost fragile in the still air. Evan leaned slightly closer, not wanting to break the moment. "Kayla, I did what anyone would have done." "No," she said gently. "Not anyone." She looked back toward the nebula, her reflection shimmering beside his in the glass. "Among my people, gratitude is expressed through action, through creation. Returning something restored is a way of saying that the person who helped you is now part of your story." Evan felt his breath catch. "Part of your story?" "Yes," she said. "And the engraving I am adding. It means that the bond is not temporary." The words settled into him in a way that felt both grounding and warm. He did not answer right away. He just stood beside her, watching the soft colors outside the station drift like slow tides. For the first time since arriving on Helios 4, the silence around him felt full instead of empty. Kayla turned to him, her voice almost a whisper. "When it is finished, I will bring it to you, and you will understand why it could not remain the same." Evan nodded, his hand tightening around the resonance shard as if it knew the weight of her words. As the lights dimmed another shade toward night, they remained there together, two silhouettes against a backdrop of distant stars, sharing a quiet that said more than either of them needed to speak. Morning arrived on Helios 4 with a quiet shift in the lighting, a slow brightening that carried the softness of a sunrise, even though no real sun touched the station. Evan Miller walked through the central corridor with a steady pace, his hand brushing the resonance shard in his pocket as if checking it was still there. It pulsed faintly, a calm warmth threaded through its glow, and somehow it made the long hallway feel less empty. He had not seen Kayla since the night before. She had left him with words he could not forget, words that felt like they were still settling into the spaces of his thoughts. A bond that is not temporary. He repeated it silently as he entered the maintenance bay. The familiar scent of warm metal and coolant greeted him, along with the gentle hum of the station's systems waking up for the day. He began his routine, scanning readouts and adjusting thermal regulators. But every so often he found his attention drifting toward the doorway, listening for the light, careful footsteps he had learned to recognize. They did not come. Instead, the bay remained still, the kind of silence that made even the machine seem thoughtful. Hours passed. The shifts changed around him. Crew members came and went with nods and quiet greetings, but Kayla was nowhere to be seen. At midday, he stepped away for a short break and walked to the small rest alcove near the docking ring. The station windows in that section were narrower, but they framed a beautiful view of drifting starlight. Evan leaned against the wall and let the moment settle, letting the quiet wash over him. His thoughts drifted back to Earth again, to his mother, to the mornings when she would hand him that mug while the kitchen smelled like freshly ground coffee. He wondered what she would have said if she knew an alien girl was repairing it with a kind of care he had not expected from anyone, human or otherwise. The thought made him smile, small and warm. When he returned to the maintenance bay, he found Kayla already inside. She stood near his work table, her posture poised, her hands lightly folded in front of her. The soft blue tone of her skin shimmered under the bay lights, and her expression held the same serene calm he had come to recognize. "I apologize for not seeing you earlier," she said. "My duties kept me occupied." Evan shook his head. "No need to apologize. I figured you were busy." She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "I have completed most of the work on your mug. Only the engraving remains." "Is it difficult?" Evan asked. She considered the question. "It requires precision, but it requires something else as well." "What is that?" She hesitated, her eyes dropping for a moment before returning to his. "Understanding. Lemurian engraving is shaped by intention, not by strength. It reflects the emotion of the person who creates it. If the feeling is unclear, the marking becomes unfocused." Evan absorbed that with a slow breath. "So you need to feel something specific?" She nodded. "Yes." Silence settled between them, full but gentle. Kayla stepped closer, close enough for him to see the faint glow along the edges of her eyes. "When you helped me in the maintenance bay, you acted without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. That is not a common trait among my people. We do not understand such actions easily." Evan lowered his gaze slightly. "It was the right thing to do." "It was more than that," she said softly. "And that is what I must understand to complete the engraving." He met her eyes again. "And do you understand it now?" Kayla held his gaze for a long moment. "I am beginning to." She stepped back slightly, giving him a small, almost reverent nod. "When it is finished, I will bring it to you. And when you see it, you will know what I have come to understand." As she turned to leave the bay, Evan felt the warmth of the resonance shard in his pocket glow brighter, almost as if it sensed the meaning behind her words. And for the first time in a long while, the station around him felt alive in a way he could not explain, as if something new and quiet was blooming in the spaces between each breath. The artificial night on Helios Four settled in slowly, the corridor lights dimming to a muted blue that made the station feel softer, almost hushed. Evan Miller finished his final checks in the maintenance bay, his tools arranged neatly on the work table, everything in its place except the one thing that mattered most. The mug. Kayla had said the engraving was the final step, but something about her voice earlier had carried a weight he did not quite understand. As he powered down the last diagnostic panel, a subtle tremor passed through the floor, gentle but noticeable. The stabilizers shifted with a soft hum, correcting whatever ripple had passed through the hull. It was nothing dangerous, but it was enough to stir a quiet unease inside him. He stepped out into the hallway and began walking toward the observation deck, the resonance shard warm against his leg with each step. When he reached the deck, he saw her immediately. Kayla stood near the far end, close to the giant viewing pane. The nebula outside washed her silhouette in shifting blue and violet light. She was still, almost too still, as if holding something inside that she did not know how to release. Evan approached slowly. "Kayla." She turned her head slightly, her expression calm but distant. "The engraving is nearly complete," she said. "But I needed to clear my thoughts." He stepped beside her, letting the quiet settle between them. The view outside was breathtaking, a swirl of stardust drifting like colored smoke across the void. "Clearing your thoughts usually means something is wrong," Evan said gently. "Not wrong," she replied. "Heavy." He waited, giving her space. She rested her hands on the railing, her fingers lightly curved against the smooth metal. In Lemurian culture, she said quietly, engraving a message into an object is a significant act. It binds the creator's intention to the person receiving it. Evan nodded slowly. You mentioned that before. There is more, she continued. When engraved with certain symbols, it can also mark a vow, an enduring one. He felt his breath catch, but he kept his voice steady. What kind of vow? She looked down, her eyes reflecting the stars outside like tiny fragments of nebula light. A vow of recognition, of protection, of meaning. Evan felt something warm settle in his chest, steady and deep. Kayla, you do not owe me anything. It is not about owing, she said softly. It is about truth. And about the moment when I realized how your actions changed my understanding. She lifted her eyes to meet his. When you helped me in the maintenance bay, you acted without calculation. That is not common among my people. We act with purpose, but you acted with kindness. The words settled into the air with a calm weight. Kindness. Evan looked at her reflection in the glass, the soft glow outlining her features. I did it because you needed help, he said. Nothing more complicated than that. But it is complicated, she whispered. You acted without expectation. And that expectationless compassion led me to see you differently. The air between them grew still, almost fragile. Evan turned toward her fully. Kayla, what does the engraving say? She drew a slow breath. The symbol is not complete yet, but its meaning is this. Your presence shapes my path. The words washed through him like a quiet tide. He felt the resonance shard in his pocket glow softly, almost in response. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the vulnerability she rarely let show. Kayla, he said gently, I do not want you to feel pressured to give meaning where there is none. There is meaning, she replied. I simply needed to be certain I understood it. And now I do. She stepped back slightly, her eyes shimmering faintly in the dim blue light. The engraving will be finished soon. When I return the mug to you, you will feel what I cannot yet say. Evan's chest tightened, not with fear, but with something quieter, deeper. As she turned to leave, her hand brushed lightly against his arm in a gesture so subtle he almost wondered if he imagined it. But the warmth that lingered told him he had not. He watched her walk down the corridor, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of night cycle lights. And as she disappeared around the corner, the station felt different, charged with a quiet significance, as if the next moment would change everything. Helios Four drifted through its quiet morning cycle, the station lights easing into a soft silver glow that reflected along the curved walls like the first hint of dawn. Evan Miller walked the length of the central corridor with a sense of anticipation he tried not to show, each step steady but lighter than usual. The resonance shard in his pocket gave off a faint warmth, as if it sensed something approaching. He wondered whether Kayla felt the same closeness, the same quiet electricity in the air. He had not seen her since the night she spoke of the engraving's meaning, but her words stayed with him, echoing softly in the spaces between each thought. When he arrived at the maintenance bay, he paused at the doorway. Everything looked the same as it always did. The stacked tools, the low hum of machinery waking up, the thin line of light across the floor from an overhead fixture. But something in the air felt different, like a held breath. He took a step inside, then another. At first he thought he was alone, but a soft shimmer of movement near his work table caught his attention. Kayla stood there, her slender form framed by the glow of a diagnostic screen behind her. She turned at the sound of his footsteps, and the faint tremble of light along her blue skin made her look almost luminous. She held the mug in both hands. The mug, repaired, whole, and changed. Evan stopped just a few feet away, a quiet awe settling over him. The ceramic surface had been restored seamlessly, the fracture lines gone as if they had never existed. But it was the engraving that drew his breath away. A delicate symbol ran along the side, etched with precision and made from a soft, glowing material he did not recognize. It pulsed faintly like the heartbeat of a memory. Kayla lifted it slightly. It is finished, she said, her voice soft but steady. Evan stepped closer, his gaze locked on the symbol. May I? She nodded and placed the mug gently into his hands. The ceramic felt warm, not from heat, but from something deeper. It was as if the symbol carried emotion inside it. Evan traced the engraving with his fingertip, the pattern smooth and precise. Kayla, he said quietly, What does it mean? She hesitated, then clasped her hands lightly in front of her. It is a Lemurian Valmark, she said. A symbol given only when a connection has shaped one's path. It is not a casual gesture. It is a recognition that your actions changed something within me. Evan looked up at her, his voice low. Changed what? She breathed slowly, her eyes shimmering like distant starlight. My understanding of compassion. My understanding of trust. And of what it means to be seen without judgment. Her words settled into the room like a soft, steady pulse. Evan held the mug closer, sensing the intention carved into it. I never expected this, he said. I only helped because you needed it. That is why it matters, Kayla replied. Lemurians often act from logic. Humans act from heart. I wanted to honor that. For a moment they stood there in a quiet that felt somehow full, the kind that wrapped around them like a gentle orbit. Evan felt something shift inside him, a subtle recognition mirroring her own. Thank you, he said softly. This means more than I can say. Kayla's expression warmed, the faintest curve of a smile touching her lips. It is not a gift, she said. It is a truth. One that I carved because I needed you to know it. Evan looked down at the mug again, the symbol glowing against his skin. The meaning resonated with a quiet depth he had not expected. It is beautiful, he said. It feels alive. It carries intention, Kayla answered. It responds to the bond it represents. The hum of the station seemed to fade for a moment, leaving only the soft glow of the engraving between them. Kayla took a small step closer. There is one more thing you should know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This mark, it is permanent. It does not fade. Evan felt his breath slow. Permanent. Yes, she said with quiet certainty. Just like the meaning that created it. He held her gaze, understanding settling in like a final piece sliding into place. And in the soft morning light of the maintenance bay, nothing about the moment felt temporary. The lights of Helios Four softened into their evening glow, a gentle gradient of amber and blue settling across the long corridor outside the maintenance bay. Evan Miller stood, quietly beside Kayla, the repaired mug warm in his hands. The engraving shimmered with a soft internal light, its glow rising and falling like the rhythm of a calm breath. Neither of them spoke at first. The silence was not empty. It carried meaning, steady and deliberate, the kind that settles between two people who finally understand something they had been circling for days. Kayla lifted her gaze to his, her expression serene, but touched with something deeper, something new. There is a final custom, she said softly. One more part of the engraving's meaning. Evan turned the mug gently in his hands. What is it? Kayla stepped closer, her voice low and even. The object must be held in the place where the bond was realized. The moment when the truth became clear. Evan considered that, his thoughts drifting back through the quiet spaces they had shared. The observation deck, he said. That is where things change for us. Kayla nodded once, the subtle glow along her skin reflecting the dim corridor lights. Yes, that is where I understood what your kindness meant. Together they walked toward the observation deck, their footsteps soft against the polished flooring. The corridor felt strangely alive, as if the station itself recognized the quiet significance of the moment. When they reached the deck, the wide window revealed a field of drifting starlight. The nebula outside stretched across the darkness like a river of color, slow and luminous. Evan stepped toward the railing and lifted the mug slightly, letting the cool glow from beyond wash over its surface. The engraving pulsed brighter, reflecting the swirling colors outside. Kayla stopped beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. The symbol responds to recognition. It strengthens when the intention is true. Evan felt the warmth of it traveling through his fingers, not hot, but steady, like a small thread tying one moment to another. And what is the intention? He asked quietly. Kayla looked at the mug, then at him, her expression open and vulnerable. That your presence changed my path, she said, and that the connection we share will not fade. The words settled into the room with a weight that was soft but undeniable. Evan swallowed gently, feeling the truth of it resonate through him. Kayla, I do not know what the future looks like for us, but I know this means something too. Me too. A faint smile touched her lips, quiet and sincere. That is enough, she said. Meaning does not need certainty to be real. They stood there together as the nebula shifted outside, the colors sweeping across the glass like slow waves. The mug glowed in his hands, the engraved symbol brightening until it matched the soft blue light along Kayla's skin. She reached out, her fingers brushing his just lightly, barely a touch at all. But the meaning behind it was steady and unmistakable. "This is the final step," she said softly. "The bond is acknowledged." Evan felt the resonance shard in his pocket grow warm, its glow aligning with the mug's gentle pulse. He looked at Kayla, his voice almost a whisper. "And what happens now?" Kayla's eyes reflected the drifting starlight, calm and certain. "Now," she said, "the story continues." The station around them fell quiet, the kind of quiet that holds a promise. Evan lifted the mug slightly, watching the engraving glow against the backdrop of stars. And in that moment, framed by the soft light of the nebula and the steady presence of the alien woman beside him, he understood something simple and profound. Some connections do not ask for words. They speak in the silence, and the silence is enough.